Well, thank you very much. Well, morning, everybody. Welcome to this meeting of the Audit Committee. Welcome to Akhtar from our external auditors, who is joining us remotely from Birmingham, and to the representative of our catering organisation, Susan Jolly.
Thank you.
Susan tells me that she's a little apprehensive about how she will be treated by the committee. And I have assured her that we're not Rottweilers. Rottweilers, we will make her welcome. Hope that she enjoys the experience of speaking to us. Right, we will move on to apologies for absence. We've got an apology, I think.
Yes, we've received an apology from Councillor Simon Harris and Councillor Nigel Lumby is substituting for him.
Thank you very much. Disclosable pecuniary interest. I'm obliged to read this to you. Members are reminded that they must declare their disclosable pecuniary interest and other registrable or non-registrable interests in any matter being considered at the meeting as set out in Appendix B of the Members' Code of Conduct, and consider if they should leave the room prior to the item being considered. Further advice can be sought from the monitoring officer in advance of the meeting. Are there any disclosable pecuniary interests? No one spoke, so we will assume that there are none.
The microphone, please.
Thank you, James. I must oblige. Item 3, minutes of the previous meeting held on the 20th December. Shall we agree that these are a correct record, or can we agree that these are a correct record before we go on to discuss any matters arising? Roger.
Thank you, Chairman. I do note the minutes and I congratulate the officers for taking down all the notes. But on the minute 79, first approval statement of accounts, it does quote correctly that the proposal made by yourself was passed, but for accuracy, I voted against it. It did not answer my name to be recorded, but for accuracy, I think it should be said that it was a majority decision.
Yes, I do remember that you voted against it.
And thank you for the patience at that meeting.
And I'm happy that the meeting should be amended. The minutes should be amended, or the resolution on the minutes should be amended, as Roger suggests. What was your?
Well, it was a decision agreed by a majority, or words to that effect.
Yeah.
It wasn't. In other words, it was not a unanimous decision.
Okay, members, I think we can agree that. I accept that Roger did make the point on that occasion. Any matters arising from the minutes? There being no matters arising, and we've agreed with the correct record, we can move on. Public questions. Are there any public questions?
There are no public questions.
Member questions. I understand there is one member question. Yeah, David asked anybody to, it's from Councillor David Basner. Has he asked anybody to read this for him?
David is here, Chairman.
Oh, I apologise. David, would you come to the microphone here? I haven't looked that far back in the room.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Yes, I have a question. And I have. Oh, cool. Thank you very much.
That's my mistake, always, David.
Thanks very much. Thank you. Yes, I have a question. I've heard reports that current total spending on North West Relief Road, including the Oxon Link Road, from its inception to today, is over £60 million. Could this be investigated by the Audit Committee and a detailed report presented as a special committee meeting within a month?
Would I have to respond to that, Chair? You'd like to respond, okay, dear.
Okay, so just to confirm that the figure that you quoted is incorrect. That is not the level of expenditure. Council approved a budget for the North West Relief Road, and that budget was approved at £44.8 million. That's from inception through to the end of this financial year. Details of spending currently are significantly below that, and the details of spending and options for the future of the North West Relief Road will be built into the medium-term financial strategy report, which will go to full council and will be public record as at the we'll go to full council on 27th of February. So on that basis, I can't see the need for audit committee to investigate anything further, certainly until that information has been provided.
Well, I think that 27th of February is not very far away, David. I feel that you can probably hold your interest until that time and take part in the discussion at the council.
Thank you, Chair. And does the figures Director of Finance relate to? They for the whole of the project, both the Oxon Link Road and North West Relief Road, as I say, from its inception to the present day.
So, my Chair,
yes,
you have to take that question. So, to confirm, I'm talking about from the inception of the project for the Oxon Link Road and the North West Relief Road in its entirety, budget £44.8 million. Expenditure significantly below that at this point in time, and will be below that before the end of the financial year.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Have a good day, as they say when you leave the store. We move on from members' questions to item 6. First line assurance, North West Relief Road management update. David, if you would like to sit at the front of the room while we have this discussion, it might be more difficult for you to hear right round at the back. Seeing your question is about the North West Relief Road.
Thank you, Chair.
Right. Now, Andy Wild is going to respond to this. Have we got that? Hello, Andy. We have got Andy with us on the screen.
Good morning, Chair.
The floor is yours.
Thank you. So, yeah, good morning, everyone. My name's Andy Wild. I'm the Assistant Director for Growth and Infrastructure. So my purpose here really is to provide a management update on North West Relief Road. So just to set the scene and give a little bit of context. So my involvement with this project began when Mark Barrow exited his current role. So I don't have a huge amount of background, but what I have been since this project came into my portfolio of responsibility is been familiarizing myself with the project and getting up to speed on the key points and issues. And of course, my attendance here today is really in relation to the recommendations from external audit and those considerations as part of the governance and the management of the project going forward. So I think there's clearly some key areas of focus and interest, and some work has already started in this area. So if I give you a couple of examples, some of the early engagement and discussion around commercial management has produced some changes. So broadly, if I set out what that means, what I have done is taken the principles of the commercial model that sits in my current service area and applied that to this project. So what we've been able to do since then is take some measures to improve and increase the level of transparency and substantiation around payments. So that's a strengthening of the commercial arrangements that sit within the project in its current form. We've also done some analysis on data management. So this is effectively all of the intellectual properties linked to this project design, information, data, to ensure that we've got a good, robust handle on all of that information, and then an assessment of risks. So those pieces of work have started already, and actually there's some very positive work going on in that space. I wanted to also reference governance arrangements. So on Monday of this week, an initial meeting started to review the existing governance, because this was something that was highlighted in the audit report that needed to be revisited. So that review of the existing governance model has started, and that will produce, I think, changes to that arrangement to strengthen it and improve on it. And again, you know, taking into consideration all of the points raised in that external audit document. So I think that clearly the findings of the external audit will be a key instrument really in terms of shaping what the progress looks like and the areas that the team and myself need to focus in on. The work will come to a natural conclusion as that business case is finalised. There's a timeline in place for that. And then at some point, obviously once that business case is completed, that will need to go through the organisation for full approval, pending a decision on where the project goes. And also, James touched on it previously, is looking at that MTFS and the funding structure that goes with the project, all of which will need to be considered by the organisation going forward. So again, really that was just the sort of summary update from myself to give some assurance that certainly that governance arrangement work has started. The other areas that have been highlighted in that report are very much on the agenda for the team to home in on, and those will be moved forward as we develop the project. Like as I said, you know, there is a timeline for this phase of the project, and I think the completion of the business case will bring to a conclusion this phase. Beyond that, you know, we will need to, myself and the team will need to look at how we will set this project up should that project move into construction, because the arrangements, the governance, the team will need to look different for that phase of the project should we get to that point. So yeah, that's my initial update, Chair. Perfectly happy to take any questions if there's anything further that anyone wants to raise.
Well, thank you very much. You seem to have got a grasp of the concerns of many members about the governance and arrangements for the North West Relief Road. I'm sure members will want to ask you other questions. Kate first and then Roger.
And thanks for that report, and I do appreciate, Andy, that you are a couple of months into this job. But I was really struck by the seriousness of some of the recommendations, and it sounds like we're not going to get financial information at this meeting, which is disappointing. But I just wanted to point to some of the issues that were raised in the report, including issues such as failure to get quite key information like minutes from meetings, failure to invite key individuals along to meetings. And I guess my question is, you said there's a governance review happening, but has that been rectified? Are we getting full minutes in meetings? Are we getting the key people along? Because clearly it was back in November that this report came out, and we're ahead.
Yeah, I mean, to answer your question, to just sort of deal with those sort of point by point. The first new executive board has met. That was chaired by myself, but obviously the findings of that report have all been taken into consideration in terms of the individuals who need to be in attendance, the discipline around attendance, the discipline around minutes of meetings, actions, all of that has been factored in, and that first meeting has taken place. Those are diarised to go forward, and as I've touched on, those governance arrangements are being revisited. So the things that can be changed quickly have been. The actual document, terms of reference, the minutes, actions, all of that discipline that surrounds it is coming together. But I can assure you that first exec board meeting has taken place, and the appropriate officers were there, and I was reassured that you know, minutes were captured, actions captured, and all of that that you would expect to be in place is. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, and could I have a follow-on question from that?
Yes.
Please? Thank you. Yeah, thanks. That does reassure me. You know, clearly this is a massive project for Shropshire Council, and
yeah.
I have to be honest. You know, and I appreciate you weren't in place when this was happening on this project. I was shocked at some of the failures, including failure to provide documents to our external auditors, or certainly them not receiving the documents they were hoping for, perhaps because they didn't exist. So I guess my follow-on question is around audit, where you see the audit committee. You know, we sit and read hundreds of pages of documents to try and hold, you know, to try and understand and make sure that everything's being done properly. It feels like the Northwestry Road project wasn't necessarily taking the audit committee and our external auditors that seriously at times. And perhaps how do you feel? Where do you feel your responsibility to the audit committee lies?
I mean, that's. I mean, from my perspective, having sort of worked for this organisation for, I think it's 15 years now, and worked with audit throughout my time, and latterly as a more senior manager, not working closely with audit is a mistake, and not being cognizant of the feedback is also an error. And it wouldn't be appropriate for me to comment on what's gone on previously. My commitment is to the organisation going forward, and making sure that the whole council feels like it's got the transparency it's seeking, and that, you know, audit recommendations are factored in very quickly, and the procedures in place reflect the feedback that's given. So I will be doing that, because it's not in my interest or this organisation's interest not to be cognizant of those comments, because ultimately the whole organisation wants this project to be run in the right way. So I've always tried to apply that, and I hope, you know, when I've had audits on my service area before, my management updates have been appropriate, and I've evidenced that I've been able to follow through on those things. And I will simply apply the same processes here.
That's a very comprehensive answer, Kate.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, Roger.
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, can I say I'm disappointed not to receive any papers today. Mr. Barrow left. I was notified that Mr. Barrow was leaving this organisation early December. To hear that Andy only recently took over, only recently attended his first governance meeting. Disappointed that I'm told that the business case is supposed to be discussed at the council on February the 27th. The business case is expected to be published February the 15th, 7 days before that meeting. And here we are now on the 6th, and it appears no information is available to the audit committee of where we are. The internal audit did an examination on this 15 months ago, and I am in council, and I can't refer to it because it was on pink papers, and there are 2 reports, but in full council I did state that it was the worst audit I had ever seen. I am surprised that Andy was not pre-briefed by Mr. Barrow or anybody in that team prior to Christmas, but now to attend now, as I say, only a few days before the business case is supposedly going to the council for examination. I understand the North West Relief Road will form part of the medium-term financial strategy. Those papers are due to be published tomorrow, go into a scrutiny meeting next Tuesday, and then being discussed by the Cabinet next Wednesday, but the Northwest Relief Road will only be referred to, not in detail. It will be going straight to council as part of it. This is a multi-million pound project. It has been stressed that it is at risk. The business case is still got to go to government, and the government to come forward whether they're going to fund it or not. Shropshire Council is still spending millions on this case with no planning permission yet issued. And I'm not sure whether Andy's seen anything, but I'm part of the Northern Planning Committee, and it was only passed by one vote, 5-4. So that was to do with the carbon dioxide. And I understand a complaint has been made to the monitoring officer because it went completely against a council decision concerning carbon dioxide. But today we're here having an update on the management of it. Can I be assured that all the recommendations from the internal audit were being carried out? We were assured at a meeting of this audit committee a few months ago that they were. We've seen no proof of it. And we were assured at that time that the Northwest Relief Road was going to the November council, to the September council, I think it was. Then it was the December council, and now we're told the February council. We seem to be drifting. Whilst this council is spending money that it can ill afford to lose on this case, and it could raise dire consequences for the council in the not too distant future.
I hear what you're saying, Roger. Would you like to reply specifically, Barry, to the audit suggestions that Roger made? Deal with it. You don't need to deal with the whole. His audit concerns, if you could respond to those.
If I may, Chair Barry, I'll give the update because I'm more in touch with the audit.
Fine, Katie, I apologise.
That's okay. Just to give you an update on the internal audit perspective. So we were scheduled to start the follow-up audit in Q4. So my team have been in touch with Andy Wild and we've agreed the terms of reference for the audit and the field work is commencing. As part of that audit, we'll be following up all of the recommendations that were in the last report. We're also including a follow-up of the external audit recommendations that came in that paper to committee. At the moment, we're planning that will be finalised and we'll be ready for the next audit committee performance update, either in the June or July committee, and we'll be reporting back. So you will get independent assurance on the actions Andy said there and the actions taken to implement those recommendations.
Well, we are where we are on process.
Chairman, I can.
All right.
Thank you, Chairman. I noticed going to the audit committee in June, there will be half this committee at least who will not be present at that meeting. It would have been good to have had something before we change councils, in inverted commas, because it will be a new council after May, whatever happens. So they will have to pick up, and some will be picking it up new. But I did pick up from Andy Wild that governance changes he had instituted. Can he illuminate what sort of changes he actually put in place? Because it was governance and it's a management here update on it that we are asked for. So what sort of governance arrangements did he feel that he needed to introduce in the last few weeks?
Yeah, happy to answer that. I mean, as I touched on, my initial focus was reviewing those existing governance arrangements, and of course these were highlighted by the external audit. So the two elements to this, there are one is that governance model appropriate? Is it sound? Obviously, immediately Mark is named as the executive director within there. So clearly there needs to be an amendment to that. So that's the first point. Is the board structure correct? So satisfying myself that we've got these arrangements appropriate. Could they be strengthened? I think the answer is yes. And that's to be agreed by the exec board in terms of whether these recommendations to change are appropriate. I don't want to go into the specifics around that because that hasn't been agreed yet, Roger, but there are some areas where I think these can be strengthened, and we'll be working on those quickly to try and get that in place as soon as we can. So I think it's clear there are some alterations that can be made, but fundamentally I think that the governance model was there. It was just ensuring that it was in place, that the meetings were taking place as they should, actions, minutes captured, etc., etc. So I think it's more of a strengthening of the arrangements primarily that I'm looking at.
The last word, Roger.
Yeah. As I say, Chairman, this is a multi-million pound project.
Got that.
For up to £44 million could be spent on it. Not agreed yet, the governance. So when is it expected that will be agreed? Can we be assured that the business case, full business case, showing all costs, will be published on or around the 15th of February, so it can be discussed at the council meeting on the so maybe the 21st of February, so it can be discussed at the council meeting on the 27th of February, please.
Are you able to give that assurance that the business case will be published, Andy?
In terms of the business case, I mean, there are a number of things that are linked to that, discharging planning conditions, etc. So again, I'm working with the team at this moment in time, Chair, just to understand what that timeline looks like. So I will need to update on that because I don't have a clear position at this moment in time.
I think the answer is, Roger, you will get all the information that is available in time for the council. And if you wish to criticise the process there, it is entirely up to you to do so.
I'm sorry, Chairman, if I can interrupt. This is an audit committee, and it was a management update we were receiving today. And what we're hearing is the management update is still in progress, and it is still uncertain whether it will be going to council, and as that decision has still got to be made. That's what I'm hearing. Is that correct?
Well, just to come back on that, my management update is the management update in terms of where I'm at, what my findings have been, and what my plan looks like. In terms of when this will be put forward more formally, that's not something I'm able to pass comment on at this point.
Right, members, shall we note Andy's report with thanks? And we will obviously all look forward to the discussions at council later in February. Shall we note the report? Agreed? Thank you very much. Thank you, Andy.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye, everyone.
First line assurance, item 7, social media management report. Nigel Newman is going to introduce this.
Thank you, Chair.
Nigel, get it.
Mr. Members, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Nigel Newman, the Council's Head of Communications and Engagement, and thank you for inviting me to share the progress we've made following the audit review of the Council's social media presence. As I'm sure you know, social media has become an essential part of the range of communications that the Council has with the public, allowing us to connect directly with the people of Shropshire in ways that not long ago would have been unimaginable. Our Council operates a diverse range of social media accounts across platforms, including Facebook, X, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Nextdoor. These accounts are managed by both individual services and the corporate communications team, which reports to me. Currently, we have 45 Facebook accounts, 34 X accounts, 12 Instagram accounts, 6 LinkedIn accounts, and 1 Nextdoor account, and around 80 internal users who manage those accounts through a social media management platform. The audit, which was conducted between June and September last year, took place very shortly after the communications team took on responsibility for this and gave an overall unsatisfactory assurance rating as outlined in the report. This followed a previous limited assurance rating following an audit in 2017-18. The audit has principally looked at issues around the governance of social media, not the content of social media. The latest audit has, however, been a catalyst, I think, for positive change. The communications team, together with the digital service team, with looking at swift action to address the identified risks and implement the recommendations. We're updating our advice for services through our intranet pages, terms of use documents, and reinforcing these messages with account holders in the services. And we're actively monitoring social media accounts for compliance. We've also frozen the creation of new social media accounts to ensure better oversight while reducing the number of social media accounts the council has. Additionally, we're conducting a procurement review to ensure that the council gets the best value for our social media management platform, with the current contract due for renewal in June 2025. This will also combine with a restructure of the communications team to look at creating a specific role with responsibility for overseeing compliance with social media guidelines and improving performance across the council. This restructure is expected to complete during the spring and will help us to manage our social media presence more effectively and provide with greater assurance. In conclusion, we've got a clear plan to address the audit recommendations and are making good progress with these, and we're committed to making further improvements in supporting the responsibilities services have to adhere to social media guidelines and policies. And together, I'm sure we can ensure a more consistent and effective approach to the council's social media activities, which can ultimately enhance our engagement with the people of Shropshire.
Thank you, Nigel. The report before, any of our audit team wish to comment on the audit aspects? We are happy with the progress of any audits in relation to our social media management.
In terms of that, the update sounds positive. In terms of the internal audit work, we'd be looking to go in after the target implementation dates, just reviewing those. The majority are anticipated to be in place by the end of December this year, with one in April. So we can be working with Nigel and his team to agree an appropriate time to go in and follow those up, which most likely would be Q4 25-26. So sounds positive, the update from Nigel, but we wouldn't be able to comment on an improvement until we've gone in and done the follow-up work.
Plainly not. Members, any comments? No, Roger?
Thank you, Chairman. To me, it's positive reading, but I do note in 8.1 that your staff are being reduced with the importance of social media and getting the council's information out there, and restricted communications team's ability to fully respond to all recommendations of the audit report. So I recognise that, but are you confident that you will be able to manage the social media and the increasing presence that there is needed of the council in the future with the numbers of staff that you have there?
As outlined in my response, the communications team is looking to restructure, and we're looking at the creation of a post that has more specific responsibility around this. And what I would also try to ensure that members understand is the bulk of the work in terms of day-to-day content creation and the running of social media accounts is not through my team. It is devolved to the services who run lots of those accounts. So if you like, a lot of the responsibility sits with those services, and what we do is provide them with the governance, training and measures to help improve their presence. Certainly from the corporate communications team point of view, we recognise that maintaining healthy corporate communications channels and the main council social media channels is a priority for us because of the importance that they have in enabling us to communicate with people of Shropshire, and I don't see that changing in any way as a result of the restructure that the team will be going through.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, cheers. Come in.
Yeah, I just had a question about the last action, the one that's not due until April 26. And it talks in there about one of the actions actually being unrealistic in being able to achieve that. Can you just expand on what's not going to be done in there? It seems to me like it's a monitoring of all the activity, which would be somewhat critical to the council to understand what's actually going on, because the social media is a minefield, that we all know.
Absolutely. And again, I come back to my previous answer, which is the responsibility of this to do this because of the volume of accounts that we have needs to be devolved to the services, and it's about us giving that structure to the services so that they understand the importance of that, and getting those reporting mechanisms back to the senior management team so they have oversight of, if you like, the whole picture of what is happening right across the council.
So you will be able to capture that and report back what's happening, but not until April, or is that now?
I think it will take time to embed some of that practices across the council. As I say, there are things that I have direct control over, which would be the accounts that my team monitor. However, a lot of these are not directly in my control.
But you're going to perform the oversight, presumably.
Yes.
Yeah. And that oversight requires that analytics to feedback.
Yeah.
Would you like an update at the June meeting?
I think if Katie, the audit's going back in the end of this year, early 26, then I think it's wait to see if the structure and everything's taken place and has been responded to. It just seems an extended action time creates an opportunity for things to deviate.
Sure, to go back and give some of the implementation dates, and Nigel's still in the process.
Yeah, so maybe
implementing,
following
so
your
there's a
follow-up.
danger that we waste more of Nigel's time going in and following up too soon when we hadn't had a chance to embed him.
Agree. Thank you.
Shall we thank Nigel for his report and note it with gratitude? All agree?
Sure.
Yes, thank you for coming, Nigel. We appreciate it. Item 8, the lantern management update. Sounds like something from Lighthouse. The Matt Jordan, not on screen. Welcome, Matt.
Steve Law. Matt read authored the report of Steve, his line manager.
Oh, I see. Sorry, it says on my agenda, contact Matt Jordan. So it is in fact Steve Law.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. So I am, as you've just said, I'm here presenting this report on behalf of Matt, who couldn't make the committee today. So I've stepped in to present it. So Matt has done the paper that you will have seen, and the action plan, and the background and summary to this is the lantern is a community asset, originally a PFI building that we had within the council's estate. It does lots of good things for the community. It's located in Shrewsbury. It has community library, IT suite, meeting rooms, and a community hall. The basis of the report is that there was a audit done in 21-22, which identified weaknesses in control around the kind of booking and management of the centre. Then a follow-up audit took place 24-25, which again has highlighted that the improvements haven't been made to the previous audit, and that remains unsatisfactory at that point. So the background, this is an asset which comes under the management in my area. It falls to Matt Jordan, who is the maintenance and facilities manager. He's recently moved into that position, having a restructure undertaken in my area this year. And he has stepped in to provide the assurance that these recommendations are now being dealt with. So the report sets out and hopefully gives the confidence that nearly 70% of the recommendations have now been completed and addressed. And the remainder, just under 30% of the recommendations, are linked to our launch of a new booking system, which is impending and will be launched later this month. That new booking system is a council-wide system that we're bringing in. It will support many assets, including the systems for the Guildhall, obviously being the council's new HQ. That system underpins a greater level of structure and management of the bookings across the estate, and indeed is pinned to the final addressing the final recommendations set out within this report. So that booking system is a key part of the final improvements that we need to do to address the weaknesses that have been in place around the lantern. So, as I said, hopefully the report that Matt has produced provides the reassurance that the recommendations have now been addressed in the major part, and those remaining will be addressed over the next couple of months, linked to that new booking system. Matt's provided a detailed appendix and summary of each one and how they're being worked through. Obviously, as I've said, with a number have now been addressed that Matt has confirmed accordingly. So the processes have been significantly improved, and what we would like is that to be re-audited again whenever that fits in with obviously coming audit programme, just so that internal audit can confirm that that all those recommendations have been now addressed, and we have a much stronger system of control at the lantern. That's the summary, Chair.
What is our audit staff's intentions on this?
Thank you, Chair. We will do a follow-up audit, the timing of which we'll agree with Steve. Obviously, the system's due to be implemented. We need to allow a little time for that to embed, for some of the data to run through the system so that we can test it fully. So there's a danger if we go in too soon, it won't have had time to go through a full cycle of the lettings. So whether that be sometime between Q1 and Q2 2026, but we'll agree that with Steve, and then the results will be fed back to the audit committee.
Thank you, Ken. Any comments?
Sorry, just a quick one, Brian, just a quick one from me.
Sorry, okay.
As soon as it's a relatively small organisation within the scale of the council structure, is it normal just to have two action owners following an audit like this? I noticed the actions fall on the one chap, and then there's a couple for somebody else. Is that typical?
Yeah, that's quite common depending on the size of the team and the specifics of the action. So typically there'll be people other than Matt doing those, the people who are operating the site. Matt's overseeing it, so he's taking ownership of those actions, but there'll be other people on site delivering it.
Thank you.
Shall we note the report with thanks? Agreed. Thank you for your report, Committee. Yes.
Thank you, Chair.
Attendance. Aye. Right. Item 9, first line assurance, external catering management update. Stop trembling, Susan. Stop trembling.
Not Chair, I promise.
Yeah, you're very welcome here to present your report.
So Shire Services had an external catering contract audit in between June and October of last year, and we had one recommendation as fundamental for our contracts that we should have had in place that we didn't have in place. Historically, the contracts were managed by the previous Shire Services manager, and when I took it in post, it come to me quite quickly that we needed to resolve this issue. So we were working heavily with the legal department to get this organised before the audit was originally commissioned, and the conversations were happening. So when the audit came through, we had 126 schools, and out of those, there was several of them that didn't have a contract in place. Within Shire Services, we have different levels of contracts required, depending on the relationship of the site that we have. And I have wrote within the report the types of contracts that we have. So we have a consultancy, we have external contracts, which is what the main audit report was was referring to, service level agreements for our maintained schools, and then we have some previous contracts that were in place that still need to run their course, and then we have some sites out to tender. So out of the 118 schools which we had at the time of writing this report, 93 have got a contract in place, but the external one, which is what the audit report was, is that we had needed 92, but we've got 91. The one remaining contract to go out is going out with the new budgets that we're doing currently now for the academic and the financial years that we're in process of doing those now with the new service level agreements that start from the 1st of April. We can't confirm or send out service level agreements at the moment because it's not until the clients agree that their budgets, then we can embed the new budget in with the service level agreement and send that out for them to look over and agree.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
That's you. A very clear explanation. Members, any comments? Or Roger.
Not sure how to phrase it, but congratulations on the way it has changed, because from the report, it's obvious that there have been some quite significant changes made, and the contracts going out, and with the staff there was concern about there, and there has been concern for a number of years that it has not been able to meet all the budget targets. But from the latest indications I have is that you are now meeting all budget targets. So, and in this present condition, present situation that the council finds itself, it is quite important that.
Thank you.
Well, there you are, Susan. Unsolicited contribution.
Roger, I did have this provoke one other question for me. And some of those old contracts, it mentions there's a potential that they won't be paid. There's potentially,
yes.
Is that a material number or is that a?
There's 3 outstanding old contracts. I renegotiated with one, and I went to the meeting with them yesterday, and they are starting a new one from September. So the new contract will be going out with them in the next week, 2 weeks, for them to look over, send to their legal department, and come back. Other ones have still got another 18 months of that to run its course, and then they will go out to tender. They've already given me notice of that this week. It's the old contracts previously were not fit for purpose in terms of making sure there's enough information on there in terms of what to do with deficits on the accounts, and also dispute resolution. But we've been working really hard with the legal department to support us with the new contracts moving forward.
But you don't see a material financial impact from those old contracts?
Not currently now, no. Not that we're doing, and we're dealing with them.
Thank you, Roger.
Right. So shall we note the report with thanks to Susan for presentation? Agree? You've sat through a great deal of our business period, what the audit committee is like. We need to detain you no longer unless you feel that you must hear more of what we do. But I don't think that's very relevant to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, item 10, second line assurance, strategic risks update. I understand James is going to respond to this.
Yep, that's okay, Chair. I'll give a brief introduction. So this is the strategic risk update report, which comes regularly through to audit committee. It's produced by Saskia, and this involves a regular review of the strategic risks across the council. As identified at the moment, there are currently 11 strategic risks on the strategic risk register. Those are reviewed every 6 months. And each risk has a named risk owner, they're scored, and a year-end target score is identified, and work in terms of the control mitigations and additional controls that are put in place over the year are measured against that, and that score status to see whether the year-end target is actually achieved. The breakdown of each of those risks are shown within the table under section 7.5, and then the exposure is plotted against a table in section 7.6. As you can see, all of the risks fall either into the high or the medium category, and by definition, therefore, fall above our risk tolerance. By that, we mean that, therefore, they're considered to be risks and, therefore, are actively being managed on a regular basis to ensure that they are being considered and managed. A risk was identified previously around an emerging risk around change in political balance. That's been considered as not being added as a strategic risk. And the executive management team, which meets every 2 weeks, continues to consider each of these risks one by one at their fortnightly meetings to identify any key areas or issues resulting from that particular risk, and that falls outside of the regular review of the risk process. So there's a kind of two-way approach to ensuring that the risks are being considered and managed on a regular basis. I'll leave it there, but I'm happy to take any questions on behalf of the lead risk owners.
You meet on a fortnightly basis to consider these risks.
So to clarify, we meet on a fortnightly basis, and one of those risks will be considered at each of those fortnightly meetings, so that we are cyclically working our way down that list. When we get to the bottom of the fourth bridge, we go back to the first one, and we keep working our way so that every single meeting that we have, we consider at least one strategic risk at that point in time.
Any comments? Roger.
Thank you, Chairman. As an audit committee, I feel we should be concerned at the number of risks which are increasing. I note the target year end. There was only two at one at 25. Now there are several at the highest risk possible on this chart here. I've also looked at the report that we had at our June meeting, and the picture there is a lot different to what is shown here. If one looks at the risk that the council is in, 1, 2, 3, 4 is at 25, and another 1, 2, 3, 4 is at 20, which is just below that, and it is synonymous of the council's position. I see yet again that there is no real reference about the Northwest Relief Road, which is due to be discussed shortly, and depending upon the council decision in government, it could put this council at great risk for the future. There's a reference about operational projects. There's three areas: operational, project, and strategic. Can you explain about the project risk and how that is arrived at? Because there seems to be some, if I read it rightly, some comments about the way the project risk is managed. It isn't before the audit committee, but I am concerned. And can I also note, whilst I'm talking, Chairman, that under the conclusions at 9.2, Audit Committee can at any time elect to have a more detailed examination of any of the strategic risks. I would like to suggest that the second in the list, that is the inability to control overall committed expenditure within current available, is a risk that this Audit Committee should be looking at, because the council has overspent its budget many times in the last few years, many departments. And it was picked up by the outside auditors that the budget commitments made in February should be attainable. Many are not. And information I've seen shows that that may still be the case. So that one there, inability to contain overall committed expenditure within the current available, I think should be looked at. And then also, I am concerned that the comment there, it says, failure of officers and members to adhere to governance arrangements. I'm not sure what that means. And again, it is at a high risk, and the present council should be operating within its governance arrangements and financial arrangements that the council have set. Thank you, Chairman.
I think the fact that the risk totals are increasing indicates how well the assessment process operates. It is a matter for concern, plainly, but it does indicate it's a lot better. We are getting more assurance from the fact that when we look at these things, we may have to assess them more highly. And if everybody was saying, "Oh, things are on," we can lower that risk. It's an assurance to us that risks are taken very seriously. James.
Thank you, Chair. So yes, I mean, just to reiterate that point, the fact that the status scoring is moving from one period to another is reflective of the fact that those risks are being considered. It wasn't mentioned in the question, but that the risk at the top of the list around ICT systems, Audit Committee have had a number of responses here from David Baker as the head of IT, who's talked about the fact that while there are lots and lots of mitigations in place, there is always the risk that the implications of the risk around our ICT system suggest that we should be keeping that on the highest alert. So it's not to say, because the risk is high, it's not to say that anything is failing underneath this. It's to say that it is high alert, and it's a strategic risk for the authority that's been taken seriously. So just to clarify, there are only 3, not 4, risks that are shown at the full rating of 25. They relate to ICT, which I've just explained, and then the 2 others are around the budget, either short-term budget and long-term budget. In February, we're now in February. In June last year, we would have just set the budget for 24-25, and therefore I would expect the risk factors to be lower at that point because a budget has been agreed by council. There is always a concern as we move up to the end of the financial year. At the point that this was reviewed, we haven't received the settlement, we haven't got a budget in place, we just started the collaborative budget process, of which all the leaders of the opposition groups are party and can see all of the information that relates to our financial position. At that point in time, it was considered it was very high risk that we will be able to set a legal budget either in the coming financial year or in the future financial year. So that's the reason why that will shift and that will move, and why that's considered those 3 are considered our 3 highest risks. In terms of the North West Relief Road, I'll give the same response I give every single time. We have a project set of risks around that. I'll explain the project risks in a moment. In terms of the North West Relief Road, there are risks around the financial implications of delivery or indeed non-delivery of the North West Relief Road. Those are considered every single month and go to Cabinet in a public report to identify a set of financial risks around the whole authority, of which there is one subset, which is around risks of external projects. And clearly, North West Relief Road is one of the major significant external projects, capital projects that we have in place. And that is how that financial risk is being managed through that process. So to put that as a separate strategic risk would be inappropriate, because we'd have to put separate strategic risks for every area of risky financial position, which would include adult social care, children's social care, etc., etc., etc. So we do have 3 levels of risk area. We have operational risks, project risks, and strategic risks. These are the strategic risks. These are basically the risks that the whole authority should be focusing on in some way or another. If it's not a focus for the whole authority, then they shouldn't be being considered as strategic risks. They would otherwise be considered as either an operational risk, so that's within a particular service area or within a particular function. Operational risks then are identified and considered to ensure that that area is performing appropriately. If it's an ongoing service, an ongoing process, that will be considered as part of those operational risks. If, however, it is a limited time period project, that's being considered for risks, that will be considered a project risk. So North West Relief Road, as an example, will be considered a project risk in the same way that implementation of a new IT system will have its own set of project risks around that. In terms of reviewing the risks and asking for a consideration of that, the financial risks at audit committee, that's perfectly acceptable for the audit committee to do that. I would just ask the question what the scope of that consideration at audit committee would be, because to be clear, around the financial position, it's being reported through to cabinet every month. It is being considered by scrutiny committee, and it's from the scrutiny point of view that you consider the impacts of the expenditure, the unders and overspends, the delivery of savings, etc. That's being considered every 3 to 4 times a year. On top of that, we have the collaborative budget group meeting, which is meeting weekly, whereby all leaders of all of the political groups at Shropshire Council have the opportunity to review that financial position and get information in relating to the current year and the future year. And so from an audit committee point of view, the question I would ask is, what scope would you want to consider that information on? Because we wouldn't want to duplicate work that's already happening elsewhere. The final question, I think, was around the governance risk. So to confirm, the risk is failure of officers and members to adhere to governance arrangements. The reason this is identified as a high risk, which is likelihood 5 and impact 4, relates in part to, as audit committee is well versed on, the review that is undertaken every year on the internal control environment. And we know that the barriers for chief audit executive has identified that the internal control environment is considered to be limited. The assurance around that is considered to be limited. And on top of that, we have every year, again, audit committee seeing this in detail, an annual governance statement. And that annual governance statement has identified, from memory, I think 9 or 10 governance issues which need to be addressed as part of the action plan for the current financial year. On the basis of that information, it would be completely inappropriate to then suggest as part of our strategic risks that we don't consider that to be a significant strategic risk. Therefore, it's identified, and until all of those actions are in place and until we start to see that improvement in the independent evidence that we have, we will not be reducing the level of that risk. To be clear, it's a risk. It does not mean that officers and members are not adhering to governance arrangements. It also does not mean that we are how can I put this? The outcome is not the same as the process. So we may not be having lots and lots of problems coming through. That doesn't mean that the underlying governance could enable that to happen. So while it's important, and it's really important for me to state that we don't have significant governance issues across the authority, nevertheless, the processes underneath that could be strengthened to ensure that those governance processes do not enable poor governance to happen across the council.
Thank you, Chair. If I can add to that, in my view, the purpose of this committee is to ensure that due process is carried out and that the governance of the council is done correctly. For that purpose, the audit committee is being advised as to the level of risk, but it is for the relevant risk manager, the relevant officer, to see if that risk can be mitigated in any way. This is a report to assure us that the risks are being taken seriously. It is not for this committee to see if they can offer ways in which those risks can be managed. That is very much an operational matter for officers. So the report is before us, telling us what the risks are. We are being assured that they are being constantly looked at. Every risk is dealt with in detail once a year, and that we are assured, as I understand it, that the relevant officers are doing what they can, if there is a possibility that those risks can be mitigated.
Chairman, can I come back?
No, I'll have Kate first, please.
Sorry, Chairman, it's a subsequent to that. When Councillor Halliday was there, she had about 5 questions, all one after the other. I'm asking for the same on this, to be treated exactly the same. And I wanted to follow up on what James has just said in reply to my question.
All right, I accept your view.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. Can I just say that this is an audit committee, not a scrutiny committee. So we're looking at it, and if I pick out the inability to contain overall committee expenditure, it was picked up by Grant Thornton, and it appears in their report that they expressed concern. This is an audit committee, and if we look at the risks for that, in June it was 15, year-end target 20, now it is 25. It is going up. I understand there has been a complete management reorganisation at director level. Members have not been cited on that, have not been involved with that at all, but 25 and increasing on 3 successive risk there is there. And if one looks at the one about the governance, it was 12 in June, 16 year end, and now it is 20. And I am concerned about what is happening, as I think the audit committee should be concerned about it. And I am proposing that, as per 9.2, audit committee can at any time elect to have a more detailed examination. And I will leave with our officers to have a look at that and bring forward, as they would in any other area that they would examine. And a good example of an operational risk or not is the one that we just looked at concerning Shire services. We've had an audit of that, which is more to do with, one could argue, operational, but it's a similar area to here. So those two, I think, just to accept that blindly, because it is just accepting blindly, when Grant Thornton, our external auditors, made mention of it and included a comment in July on the condition of the status of the council and the continuing one. And I think we should take notice of what Grant Thornton is saying about the budget that the council is setting, and it has been a number of years since it's actually met its budget targets. It is even more important now that we do have targets and are able to deliver what is needed. The prediction for this current year is now £35 million over £35 million worth of reductions, which will not be able to be met and rolled over to next year, increasingly harder to meet. So I would suggest that inability to contain committee should be audited to see how those amounts arrive at, and why are we not managing? Because it seems to be within the organisation that. Thank you, Chairman, but I would propose, as per 9.2, that we look at those two.
Right, you're going to comment, Nigel, now. I'll come back to you later. I haven't gone.
It's just the fact that there's a proposal coming. I want to say something regarding that. With regard to the inability to contain overall committed expenditure within this financial year, if we are to report on that or request a report on it, which will come before us in June, it's gone, it's closed, it's finished. The financial year has ended, too late. So I don't actually accept the proposal because it doesn't make sense.
Thank you. Well, I suppose you'd better deal with the proposal. Have you got a seconder? Right. So, all those in favour, 2. Those against, 2. And for the first time in my career, I have to use the chairman's casting vote, and I vote against it. Now we'll go back to Kate, who's been trying to come in for quite a long time.
Thank you, Chair. Regarding the overall risk exposure, I'm looking at 7.7. It's it shows that this is quoting from the report, the strategic risk exposure is above our tolerance level, i.e. high and medium risks, and it's currently 100%, with all current strategic risks being either high or medium risks. So I appreciate what you're saying. We're looking at various risks. The fact that they're being looked at itself offers reassurance. But what does it? I mean, clearly that's of some concern that it is above our tolerance level. And does that kick in anything further, or do we just note that it's above our tolerance level? You know, why have a tolerance level if we don't do something about it, if we're above it?
If I may share. So yeah, what we do is we set a tolerance level, and what that basically means is that if a risk is assessed and falls below that, then we're saying that we're willing to accept the level of risk that is there. So if we, there will always be risks associated with lots and lots of things, and when we do that assessment of that risk, if it falls within a certain range, then we would say, okay, we're not going to put in place additional management controls to try and bring that risk down because it's at the level that we're willing to tolerate. So by definition, therefore, as we go through and we consider risks, we'll assess those. But those that are reported, those that are identified that fall below our tolerance level, then tend to drop away. So what we could do is kind of pull that whole list together and show them all on here, but then we'd just be saying we're not doing anything with those because they're below our tolerance level. So it's a little bit of a cyclical thing. This is it's a catch-22 in a sense. Once something becomes a tolerable risk, there's no real point in reporting it because we're tolerating it. So as we move through the consideration of trying to find the word, the target score, some of those target scores, as you can see, actually fall into our risk tolerance level. So if they reach that point, we'd stop reporting. So they would then disappear off the risk, and then you'd say next year, what's happened to that risk because it's now disappeared? And I'd just be saying, well, it's below our tolerance level, therefore we're not reporting it. So by definition, we just report on the things that are above our tolerance level. Okay.
I think so, but the risk has significantly gone up, hasn't it? In terms of the
individual
risk.
risks.
Yeah.
The individual risks have increased, yes. That's what we're reporting regularly, and they can go up and they can go down as part of that. But all of those above our tolerance level are all being considered on a regular basis. Those below the tolerance level are not considered on a regular basis because we've already made the decision that we can tolerate that risk.
The risks can just kind of continually go up and up and up, and as long as they're looked at regularly, that seems to be what you're saying to me.
I mean,
we're fine.
We don't want them to go up and up and up. And they can't go above 25. That's the highest score that we can give. But a score of 25, just to be clear, means that the likelihood is it's happening or it's very close to happening. And the impact is that it would have an impact across the whole authority. And in reviewing that, we do ask ourselves constantly the question, is that the right score? Can we move it down? And to be fair, as the chair suggested, I could assess a risk as 4 or 3 or 2, and suddenly the problem seems to go away. So the easy thing in terms of transparency, the easy thing would be to say they're all falling below our tolerance level, nothing to see here. That's why we are very conscious about reporting these risks and making clear what the risk description is, but not in great detail, because in all seriousness, these can be misinterpreted and considered inappropriately by the public or whatever, by seeing something that's there that's perhaps been there for a while, or perhaps can be misinterpreted. So all in all, we are continually reviewing those risks. We always consider the scoring against those risks. We don't manufacture that scoring. We assess it as best as we can. But not only that, the process behind this is the risk owner will assess that school, but they will only assess that school after a review has been undertaken by managers within that area. There's then an independent assessment that's taken by, and I need to remember who all these are. Barry, Katie might help me out on here. But finance will review it, legal will review it, audit will review it, the risk team will review it. They will all give their own independent score as to the level of assurance they can provide against that. And then the risk owner, finally, at the end of it, then says, based on what I can see, based on the controls, based on the assurance I can see from other areas, this is how I assess the risk. And that prevents inappropriately underscoring the risks, because actually when you look at it, you say, I can see all of these different areas in here, I can see all these different points that are being raised, and on that basis, the likelihood it remains where it is. Therefore, more controls need to be added into the process, and then we need to assess whether those have worked.
Well, members, I think we've had a very good reminder from James as to how the process works, and I am again impressed with how seriously the risks are actually considered and taken. Yeah, all right, we'll take Roger and then Nigel.
Thank you, Chairman. In 7.8, I note the emerging risk political balance change in administration has been considered, and a meeting has been held between the Section 151 officer, monitoring officer. Conversations also taken place with the Chief Executive Officer. Overall, it was decided that any implications should be held within programme, project, operational. So that risk appears in all three of those, but the strategic, it doesn't appear at all on the list that we have. So what sort of level strategically is this given? It's obviously not in the top 11, but obviously it appears in project, programme and operational risk for this authority. So has it been considered at a strategic level, or as it says there, just left with the three that is pictured?
I think none of us know or would like to forecast at the moment what the political makeup of this council will be after May the 1st. And to that extent, it's a risk which is not possible to assess. What one assumes that the next council of whatever political complex will be a responsible council acting in the best interests of Shropshire residents. I certainly cannot see how any such risk, if risk is the right word for a change in composition of the council, could possibly be assessed.
If I can, Chairman, previous organisations I've been in, councils I've been in, have placed it on their risk register. And obviously it is of concern, that's why it's in this report, that it is a risk. It has been talked about at 3 individual risks, and it's the combination of those. What sort of score is it? Not in the top 11, but what is the risk to the organisation of either political balance or change of it in administration, which is what is listed in that paragraph, but no other comments anywhere.
Well, I know your view, but I don't agree with it. Nigel.
Well, Chair, it's absolutely ironic because my question was about 7.8 and I wanted to congratulate the fact that the council had investigated it as a risk. Previous members of this audit committee had brought this up, and that it was deemed that it was within programme, project and an operational risk, so it needn't be a high strategic risk. I read that paragraph totally different to what the other council does, and I'm really happy with what that says. Thank you.
Thank you, Nigel. Right, we've given the report a good discussion. Shall we note strategic risk update? come with reservations, but the report is before us. We need to move on. Let us note the report.
Chairman, I am not supporting that, so can we go for a vote? I would like my vote recorded.
Of course we can. Always happy to have your dissent recorded. Those in favour that we note the report? You're against now. And will you make a clear note of that so that when the minutes come before the next committee, Roger will have no reason to doubt or ask for a correction. Nigel.
Chair, sorry, Roger asked for it to be recorded. I don't know whether this committee has got a policy of recording the votes or not. And full council, you have to have X amount of people say before it goes to recording. I don't know how it.
Oh, that's a recorded vote, yes.
Yeah.
Well, council rules are different. Actually.
Yeah, so what I'm asking is what's the rules for this committee? Thank you.
Well, we will assume it has always been the practice that I have known in the nearly 20 years I've chaired this committee, that if a member wishes their dissent to be recorded, it is a courtesy to do so.
For you, Chairman, it is in the Constitution that any individual member can ask for their own vote to be recorded,
right.
and that's all I was doing for my vote.
That's fine.
Yeah. We're in terms of due process. Okay. We never. Sorry. Oh, sorry. Yes, beg your pardon. Item 11, Treasury Strategy. This is the long report. Yes, right. Sorry, James. I thought you were pointing to Barry to introduce
to introduce that report, which was next.
Right, that's all that is me. Right, we are definitely on item 11, Treasury Strategy, and it is definitely James who is going to report this to us or comment on it. James.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the Treasury Strategy for 2025-26. So this is an annual report that is taken through Audit Committee, through Cabinet and through Council, where it is ultimately approved. The Treasury Strategy itself, and sorry, just to confirm, Audit Committee is taken through the Audit Committee purely so that Audit Committee members have the opportunity to challenge and question that ahead of Cabinet and Council approving it, and Council can then take assurance that Audit Committee had the opportunity to review and consider the Treasury Strategy. So fundamentally, this is around the holdings that the Council has in terms of our investment opportunities and our borrowings. These are set out in various tables within the report. What we've seen over the last few years as our level of borrowing, which was close to 400 million at one point, has now slowly reduced down and is currently set to be around about 336 million pounds, and that has gone down, and that's basically because debts that were borrowing that was undertaken in the 80s, 90s, 2000s has matured and has been repaid, and has not been new borrowing has not been taken out to replace them. So at the same time, as we've seen that borrowing go down, we've also seen therefore the cash balances that are available go down as well. So these are now sat at around about 25 million. You may remember that in the past they were sat at closer to 150 million pounds. Now, if you remember as well, when we had balances of 150 million pounds, we also had historically low interest rates, and therefore the value that we were able to generate from holding that level of cash was very low comparatively to previously, and the level of borrowing that we had was at historically, well, not necessarily high rates, but were considerably higher than you'd be able to borrow in the current period. So the plan agreed with our Treasury strategy advisors was to reduce our cash balances and pay off the borrowing as it matured, because there's no penalty when you do that, and then that would mean that we would be in a better overall financial position from our cash balances. What we've then done is we've now reached a point where cash balances are as low as we are comfortable for them to be. So we would now look to borrow to bring our cash balances up, and that borrowing would obviously be against significant capital schemes and investment. So we expect out of the borrowing to increase. At the moment, given market circumstances, we are seeing that the borrowing rates, interest rates, are higher than we anticipate them to be in perhaps a year or 2 years' time. So on that basis, the advice that we are following is that we are borrowing fairly short term rather than tying the authority into 20, 30, 40-year borrowing levels, which would then be potentially at a higher rate than we could get maybe in 12 months' time. So the Treasury strategy as a whole sets out the parameters by which we can enact that sort of approach and process. So as it stands, there is nothing significant identified within the strategy that is different to previous strategies. It just sets out those parameters. It sets out the prudential indicators, all of which are reported within the appendix, that enable the authority to ensure it stays within an agreed set of parameters. We do have significant capacity to borrow over and above where we are at the moment, but we are, as I've said at the start, we're concerned about the overall financial position of the authority to ensure that we maximise the benefit of the holdings that we have, rather than just exposing the authority to borrowing at an unsustainable or unaffordable level. I'll leave it there. I'm happy to take any questions in terms of the detail of the process.
Nigel.
Yes, thank you for that. I do watch borrowing like a hawk, because there's quite a lot of councils around the country that they're borrowing substantially higher. Ours was 380 million. It went down, I thought, to 318. So I was quite surprised to see 336 when you just said it went down to 336. To me, it seemed to have gone back up, unless we just didn't go down as far as we thought it was going to go. And then the last time I was here on the committee, you talked about 400 million, going to 400 million for loans. Are we sort of steering slightly away from that at the moment because of the position of the council? That's the first question, and I've got another one. Do you want that now or after this one?
James will answer that, and I'll come straight back to you.
Thank you.
Chair. So yes, as I say, there have been some short-term borrowing, so the levels have gone down and then back up. So yeah, basically because of that short-term borrowing that I referred to, that means that our levels are slightly higher than they would have been. And in terms of the 400 million, we are continually assessing where we would be. In terms of the level that we're talking about at the moment, it's still in that ballpark. What we are not doing is borrowing that long term. So if you borrow long term, you're looking at a long term position, and you say, based on the expenditure that we're going to undertake around, for example, capital projects, this is the level of borrowing we need to support that. If we're not taking that decision because we don't need to, because interest rates are still higher than we want them to be, then it's a different equation where we're looking at cash flow and you're saying how much do we need to borrow on a short-term basis that enables us to go through. So while interest rates are higher than we would want, you're not going to see that level jumping significantly, but then it will do when the market is in the right position to do that. And we will have to do that at some point in the future. There's no getting away from that. We will be borrowing more on the base.
Second question.
Thank you. This is just for clarification for me. So the paragraph or the chapter there for the Canoville talks about 69 million of in-loan facilities for CDL, and that's up from 30 million. So who do they borrow that from? Is that actually internal borrowing for us, or is that then from us rather, or is that then on top of the 336 million? I just want that clarifying for myself. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So it's contained within the overall figure, but there's effectively two parts to this. So CDL will borrow from the local authority, and there is a set arrangement as to what they pay in terms of servicing that debt. So that is based upon an assessment of their financial standing. It's based upon the level of borrowing that we could, the interest rate that we could borrow at. And that is what is then loaned, and the repayments are made on that basis to CDL. That is completely independent to what we actually do. So in theory, if they wanted to borrow 10 million and we've got 40 million sat here, we could give them the 10 million, we'd earn interest on it, but we wouldn't actually have to go out and borrow that 10 million. If that makes sense, it's divorced. So we look at all of the commitments and expenditure that we've got coming in. CDL is one of those commitments. And then we look at our balances overall. And bear in mind our cash balances, it relates to it in the mentions this in the treasury strategy. We hold funds on behalf of West Mercia Energy and the fire service as well. And so effectively CDL, all of those elements are there together. And what we do is we manage the net position for the authority from that. But what we do is keep every element of that separate. So we may be earning interest on behalf of the fire service, and that's completely identified over here. But in terms of the overall cash balance, it seems to appear with one figure. That makes sense.
Roger.
Thank you, Jim. To continue with the previous question, I note on page 31 of my report here, it says gross borrowing less than CFR. 24-25 and 25-26. I see the estimate for 25-26 increases by 133 million to a gross borrowing, including the housing revenue account, rising from 394, where it is for this current year, to 527 million in 25-26, and the net borrowing increasing from 319 for this current year to 452 for the year 25-26. So following on what was said, can I be informed about why that is, and have I misread something? And then I have some other questions concerning other parts, but I'm just picking up Councillor Lumby's comments about the borrowing, because in previous years it's increased by 40 million, 30 million, anything like that. But if one looks at the chart and the table that's there, 25-26, 133 is a big increase. Thank you.
So for you, Chair, so yes, the interpretation that you made is correct in terms of the availability, the limit, the cap in relation to borrowing. So just to be clear, this doesn't mean that we're going to borrow at that level. This is the Treasury strategy that allows us to. So it would be, ineffective. It would be very inefficient if I had to keep bringing back reports through to council to change every time we have a change in circumstances. So the way this works is we go through those indicators and we're effectively working on the worst case scenario. So imagine we had to borrow for this and this and this, and all of these elements are pulled together, and then that means that we have the facility. Now, there is a separate calculation that then falls into the medium-term financial strategy around the minimum revenue provision, so the cost of borrowing. That does not have to reflect the total level of expected borrowing that could be. That can be much more aligned to a more accurate estimation of that. And then there is a in-year monitoring of that, which then ensures that the implications of that are demonstrated within the revenue. So we will have savings on a regular basis, and these will come through. You see these come through in the monitoring, simply because the level of borrowing that we expected at the start of the year is not as high as we expected. And generally, the reason for that is because the capital programme is set out to say we're going to spend £100 million, and then we only end up spending £80 million, for all very good reasons. But the point is, the second I go, it's £100 million, and I'm setting the budget at 80, the capital strategy, the capital programme will end up spending 100 million, and then I'll have to come back to council and ask for the approval. So we've always set it at the highest level, the kind of the worst case scenario. So yes, you're seeing significant increases in the potential for borrowing, which includes the HRA. So there is borrowing within HRA, which again is set out within the MTFS. And I've referenced to this previously. We talked about it at the Collaborative Budget Group. Roger, as you'll be aware, and we have talked about it at audit committee as well. So there's no surprises in terms of the fact that we are significantly under borrowed according to our treasury advisors, and they are suggesting that we should be borrowing, which is why those figures are there. However, they're also advising that we don't need to lock into long-term agreements for that borrowing, which would manage the cash flow in the short term, and then borrow when they believe the market will be at an advantageous basis. But those figures are the cap, the limit to how far we can take that, and allows us to implement the treasury strategy and then the daily management of that within that strategy.
I think it is an assurance that our officers always look at our borrowing on the most pessimistic basis, rather than treating it as looking at it saying, oh, we can manage without that, and taking an optimistic view. I am glad that they look at the worst case scenario. Roger.
Thank you, Chairman. I note that, and I also note what's said in 2.7 about the prudential borrowing between 25-26 and 27-28, and the capital strategy there, which mentions 53.4 and 55.5 million. So I recognise that, but maybe exploring in another place why it's going up, by why officers feel that the borrowing limit needs to be raised by that amount for 25-26. But can I also add, in the public domain is the capitalisation borrowing request that has been made. Is that included in these figures? And also any other borrowing that may be required for other projects that the council is anticipating they will be doing? But, yeah.
Yes. All borrowing assumptions are included.
Sorry, Chairman, I didn't catch.
Yes, all borrowing assumptions are included within those.
So if I say the prudential borrowing is 53.4 million, so if there's anything required for the capitalisation, that will be included in that, is it? And any other, that's what's anticipated, although there is a limit where it could go higher.
That's the calculation based on the information that we have.
Well, again, finally, Chairman, so what we are doing, and council will be doing, is actually authorising officers to borrow that amount of money without further reference as and when necessary. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct. That's the way that treasury management works across the country.
Thank you, Chairman.
Got it absolutely right, Rod. Sorry. Right, shall we agree and note the report? Thank you. I think we'll now take a 5-minute comfort break. And hopefully we're back here at 1:45. So we'll adjourn. Item 12 is review of the audit.
Sorry, Rod, sorry.
Sorry, not live yet. Oh, right, I didn't
We're live
realise
again.
you'd taken it off. Oh, well, great, you did. Next item, item 12, review of the audit committee's annual work plan. That's not the audit or organisation's annual work plan. This is the committee's annual work plan. Future learning and development requirements. Larry's going to introduce this.
Thank you, Chair. So obviously it's critical to ensure that we're discharging the function of the audit committee with an appropriate work plan for the year ahead. Now, this is something that should be familiar to most audit committee members. It's defined and documented in advance of the upcoming financial year. So this is setting the work plan for 2025-26. And also the report includes some details around the learning and development opportunities for audit committee members in order to ensure that we're covering the right areas and the level of knowledge is clear within audit committee members to discharge those duties. So Appendix A is presented in a format which demonstrates not only the report, the frequency of the reporting schedule, the committee date at which it will be presented, but it also includes the rationale. It also includes a link to the audit committee's terms of reference to show how that link is achieved, and then therefore how the audit committee's terms of reference is discharged over that 12-month period. So Appendix A covers the proposed plan. Appendix B then identifies the topics of learning for audit committee members to consider. Now, I do appreciate with the local council elections, membership of the committee is likely to change. However, there are core areas of learning that would be required of any audit committee member, and they're detailed within there as well. And obviously those will be covered off as part of any member induction programme, but also there's a planned audit committee training session for June in which we will be covering off some of those elements as well. So I feel the report, the appendices should be fairly self-explanatory, but welcome any questions on that.
It's a comment really just to say, as probably the newest member of the committee, that I've found so up to date. The support from the team in terms of training really a really great quality, and so I'd just like to say I think you don't always get training at this level, regular ongoing training at this level, and so it was just to support the plan, and thank you for the support you give the committee members.
Thank you. Thank you. I've just got one other point to add, and it was following your induction session, Kate, when you first joined the committee, and we realised at that point that there was an opportunity there to share the information that we receive from our professional bodies in a bit more of a consistent way. So we're currently looking at setting up a SharePoint folder, and that SharePoint folder will include a library of documentation that can be used as a reference manual in effect, and we'll look to develop that over the next few months. We're hoping we'll have that in place when the new members come in.
I must say that, Kate, you have contributed very well to this committee in your short period, and Rosemary for the years before you. And I hope that one or both of you may still be available to sit on this committee after the election. But, any other comments? Nigel? Oh, sorry, I thought you...
Scratching me in.
Very good. Okay, check the report with Shrewsbury. Agreed. Item 13. Internal audit performance report and revised annual audit plan. This is what the audit team, as distinct from the audit committee, are going to do, hopefully during the coming year. Barry.
Sorry, Chair, this is the internal audit performance reports. This is looking back on internal audit work that's been completed to date. The audit plan one is further along.
Sorry, you're right.
Okay, so thank you, Chair. This report summarises internal audit's work for 24-25 to date. Delivery is in line with previous delivery records. Lower assurance level reviews are highlighted, providing members with an opportunity to challenge those as they see appropriate, as we've done throughout the current financial year. Revisions to the 24-25 plan provide a total of 1,266 audit days. Performance to date is in line with those delivery records that I've just mentioned, at 73%, when compared to 71% 23-24 and 64% 22-23. The team are on track to deliver a minimum of 90% of the revised annual plan by the year end. So just in terms of the resourcing within the team, one auditor has left the council since the previous performance report to the committee. There is also a recruitment freeze in place at the moment, whilst the restructure of the new council and its new operating model is defined. In addition, one post within the internal audit structure will be removed as part of the resizing work, and myself, I'll work closely with Katie as the internal audit manager to ensure that the team are aligned to that new structure and operating model once it's been fully defined and implemented moving into 25-26. I wouldn't ordinarily want to diminish the capacity within internal audit, but my view is that the removal of the vacant post that's currently within the structure will have an overall minimal impact, and it is one of a number of vacant posts that sit within the structure. The vacant posts we've looked to redefine and reconsider once the council's operating model and new structure has been formalised. So just to cover off the internal audit work that's been completed since the 21st of October, 10 final reports have been issued during that period, and they're all listed with their assurance rating and broken down by service areas in paragraph 8.6. Across those 10 reports, 83 recommendations have been made during those reports. They're also included within paragraph 8.6, and the year-to-date position is shown in Appendix A, Table 2, where one fundamental recommendation has been identified as part of those 10 audit reports that have been finalised. We've currently got 6 draft reports awaiting management responses. They will be included within the next performance report, along with any other finalised internal audit work that has been completed. Details of control objectives evaluated and not found to be in place as part of planned reviews resulted in limited and unsatisfactory assurances appear in Appendix A, Table 3. The appendix also includes descriptions of the levels of assurance used in assessing the control environment and the classification of those recommendations. Tables 4 and 5 provides a glossary of the common terms. In terms of any patterns that are appearing in the lower assurance levels, I do have to identify that the Place Directorate has the highest number of lower assurance levels at this point, with 6 limited and 2 unsatisfactory audit opinions. In terms of the lower assurance opinions that have been reported in the report today, I'd like to ask members whether they would like to seek any further assurances from those areas in particular.
Right, the report is before you. Roger.
Thank you, Chairman. Compliments on the report. I note the reduction in staff and the numbers that are down, including the auditors. But I wish them all well, but we are where we are. Also, on page 85, embedding the Shropshire plan. That makes interesting reading. And yes, there are some questions there. And then really, my question is, on page 92, the section 38 road adoption process. As I see, it was last looked at in 1819. I picked up. Sorry?
1819.
2018, 2019. Okay. Yeah, but it might.
I've got a
Some
good
old
memory,
roads
Roger.
around,
You've got a
Roger.
good memory, Roger, because I didn't think you went that far back.
Yeah. But I am conscious that individual members in the authority have picked up about delays in adopting roads have taken some time due to whatever consequences. So I think that will be a good area for internal audit to have a look at, not only the sections 38 and the staff there, but the processes that need to be followed in adopting that road.
Yeah, as we've referred to in other unsatisfactory assurance areas, we'll be following those recommendations up. So the recommendations that were specifically made within that report will be followed up routinely as per the normal audit programme.
Through you, Chairman, but 2018, 2019 was 5-6 years ago. Has it been looked at since then?
Yeah.
No, this is the first time we've done the audit since 2018-19. If you recall, Barry and I had slightly changed the follow-up process. In the past, we'd only followed up unsatisfactory audits. So we this year revisited all the limited ones as well.
Yeah, I'm making no criticism, Chairman. I know that. What I'm suggesting is that if that could be put on a fairly urgent a programme, that it is looked at fairly soon.
Yeah, we note that request. Obviously, road adoption is not considered as a strategic or significant risk to the council's future. And as you well know, the audit committee the audit officers can't look at every aspect of the council's work each year. But I think it's a good point.
Yeah. No, Chairman, I understand that, but it is a big risk for the council's reputation, because Shropshire Council has said, why aren't you doing this? So politically, with a small p, I think it is quite an important area.
That's been noted, and we've got the officer's assurance.
I've just checked the implementation dates, and the proposed dates are due to be implemented by June 25. So we'd be looking to go in Q2 25.
Yeah,
right, nice.
Right, okay, Kate, thanks for that reassurance. I was actually just going to back Roger up, is that we have a report that highlights, sorry? Yes, goodness. that highlights 3 things that stare out at us, and the minute we say, actually, we want more information on that, you turn around and say, oh no, that's subject to further audit, so you can't do that yet. So my brain's a little scrambled as to why we get a report requesting that we ask about something, and when we do, we're then told, no, that's all in hand. If that makes sense.
Yes, okay.
The part where Barry and I have come in from the internal audit perspective is we can't give you any more update until we go in and do the audit. But the committee can ask, as you've had the people in this morning, to come and give a management and interim update if you want one sooner. Obviously, the timing is the issue, isn't it, really? That section 38 road adoptions, that they're planning to implement everything by June. So we'd be looking to go in July. So our report to the audit committee would be coming in the September committee, but you could absolutely ask that service area to come in and give you an update in the June or July audit committee to say what they're doing in the meantime to give you that assurance more promptly. Then we can come and give you the independent assurance. So what we're highlighting the low assurance areas for you to identify if there's any further update you want from the council. We won't be giving you a further update till we've done the audit.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks, and thanks for the report. I think the final ask there was about whether you would like us to look more specifically at place given the low assurance levels that we've just discussed. And I think that would be a good idea, firstly because you're suggesting it, and I think you've got a very good overview. Also because you have to be wary of causation, don't you? But we've had external auditors raising concerns around governance and processes on the Northwest Road, obviously within place. So it would be good to understand if there are specific issues in that department. So I would support that.
Thank you. Okay, no more comments. Shall we accept the report? Thanks.
Sorry,
Jim.
sorry. Yeah, it's just about the recruitment and the people.
Yeah.
And my understanding is one person's left, so there's now currently 4 open positions in audit. But we're not planning on doing any recruitment at this time until the reorganisation's reset.
Yeah.
I don't know, just it doesn't seem to seem the right way forward to me. I feel that if we're 4 down already, one's going, so there's 3 positions to be filled.
Yeah.
We should probably advance that as quickly as possible.
Yeah, up until this point this week, the clarity around the way that the new council is going to operate relatively soon has not been clear, and therefore I'll come on to it in the next report around the plan. But in terms of managing the resource and understanding what the profile is that resource needs to look like to deliver the assurances required by the committee moving forward, we're not going to have that detailed understanding until that's embedded properly. So there's going to be a period of time where there could be changes to that too. So the way that we're going to operate within this is to look at the resources that we've got within the team at the moment to deliver the year-end opinion, to deliver enough coverage to give the year-end opinion, which we will do. I'm confident that the resources within the service are there to deliver the year-end opinion, and then following that, we will be looking at completing the full risk assessment for the audit planning process for 25-26, and as part of that process, we'll be firming up what the resources need to look like for that. I wouldn't want to bring anybody in at this point in time without that clarity as it stands, because we don't want to be in a position where we're getting that wrong in any way.
Okay, Nigel.
Yeah, I want to further on from what Jim said, because I'm certainly not happy where we are. I just heard what Barry said about let's not have any more in until we know where we are. But actually, when you're 3 auditors down, with a risk of any more leaving at any time, I think you've probably reached that critical point. And certainly in 8.2 of your report, you say that the loss of the last person has had a significant impact on your what you're able to deliver. And I don't think we should lose sight of that significant impact. And as such, I want to make a proposal if I can. I'll read it out, perhaps to be added to the end where we agree to the report or whatever. This committee is worried about the further loss of an auditor. This compounds on reservations at recent meetings about the audit team's ability to provide sufficient audit function and the ability to offer more than a limited assurance that we're now getting used to. The vacancy level within the team is unacceptable. We recognise that there is a moratorium on recruiting, but consider that senior officers should recognise the seriousness of the situation, and at least we request a report from the senior team by the next committee. Does anybody second that?
Second that, Chairman.
I agree with all that. I confirm. I prefer to leave that resolution till after we've had the internal audit plan, because from what I know from Barry, he's going to cover quite a bit of this. So I'm going to defer that resolution till after we've had the internal audit plan. But it will be taken because I support it.
Chair, that's fine. I'm only putting it forward now because I read the next one, and I thought this was the best time, but I quite happily have it to the next
Yes, it will be taken then. Sorry.
Can I just come back on one point, Chair?
Yeah,
Nigel. Just picking up on your point in there, and there was just a point of clarification. Seemed to be a bit of a linkage in there between the limited assurance opinion, the year-end opinion, and the size of the internal audit team. They are completely distinct. They are completely separate things. So the overarching internal audit opinion at year end is a culmination of the work that's been undertaken by the team on that annual basis, but it's not necessarily reflective of the size of that team.
Well, you can
I reply to that?
Yeah, of course you can.
I hear what you say, Barry. However, the team has shrunk year after year after year, and we're not getting out of reasonable reassurance or limited reassurance. And the only way to get out that is to have perhaps more team members. Now, I actually accept the one coming out of it because you haven't recruited to them 2 posts for 2-3 years anyway.
Yeah.
So I haven't got a problem with that. Is as your team shrinks, your chance of getting away from limited assurance, I'm sorry, I don't, because you're not necessarily being able to get all the strategic risks you can and help put it right. There's a lot of things, other things in play, and that's we've shrunk as an organisation, and now you have got that you're reorganising. I accept that, but I maintain that position.
Yes.
The only way that,
somebody else to come in.
The only way that the council will receive an improved assurance opinion at year end is improving the control environment. The auditors have no control over that whatsoever.
Right. A strong audit team provides an incentive for good control.
I think we'll leave it at that on that point. But Rotary wants to come in, and I've always allowed substitutes if present to contribute from their experience.
Thank you. Just a question, really, Barry, to ask if any of the staff that have gone went under the voluntary redundancy programme, or are they that horrible term, natural wasted?
Just to confirm, yes, natural wastage. So yeah, they all moved on to other roles. Yeah, non through VR.
So shall we accept the report for the moment and come back to this point that Nigel wants to raise on all of it in item 15? Accept the report. Thank you. We now go to Kate for third line assurance report of the audit review of risk management.
Thank you, Chair. This report outlines the findings from the internal audit review of risk management. By way of background, as part of the public sector internal audit standards, we are required to evaluate the effectiveness of the risk management process. And to support that, the Audit Committee's terms of reference includes a requirement to annually review the adequacy of the risk management arrangements. To support you in doing that, we always include the risk management report in the audit plan. I'd just like to highlight a small error on paragraph 6.2. It refers to the last review being undertaken in January 23. It was January 24 when it was last reviewed, and it was reasonable. Since the last audit, the risk and business continuity team have undergone some small changes. There's currently 2 full-time equivalents following the departure of the risk and business continuity manager through voluntary redundancy in the autumn of 2024. Management of the risk management function is temporarily with the HR and organisational development manager until the new structures are finalised. As part of that risk management process, reliance is placed on managers across the council to complete the operational risk reviews, and the risk management team provide oversight of that process with service managers and assistant directors. The process for updating operational risks has been reviewed by the risk management team. Significant changes are proposed in the coming year. However, this audit is looking back over the 24-25 year when the current process was still in place. The audit findings are detailed in paragraph 6.9, and the audit was overall assessed as reasonable. I highlight in 6.9 there were 2 control objectives reviewed that weren't achieved. That's number 1 and number 2 within that table. And the audit focused on review of those operational and project risk registers, so which we discussed earlier. Happy to take any questions in relation to the audit if you have any.
Nigel?
You mean?
Well, Kate's happy to take any question.
Yeah.
I thought you got your hands up.
Yeah, but you said
Sorry.
Nigel. Sorry. I always do what you tell me, Chairman.
Sorry.
Yeah. I do note on page 2, and it's picking up a point made earlier on this meeting, there are no formal reporting points for project risks. These are allocated to the appropriate project board for management and review. The risk management team continues to be involved with key projects where resources allow. Project risk is where I brought up at a previous item today. I am concerned. And then that is followed by 6.4 and 6.5. Reference following departure of manager, a new one is being in place, and then significant changes are due to be introduced early 25. So I just wondered if any of that can be expanded on. Is there any need? And then also looking down, as was referred to in 6.9, the item 1 and item 2, control objective not achieved, and also number 2, control objective is not achieved. And also in 1, there is words there. There are many projects ongoing within the council, and this is an area of increased risk. Again, refers to my items earlier on today when I said about the individual risks and the strategic risk and the audit not being cited on them. And then in 2, it says there, therefore a date would not be required. I understand that, but then it goes on to say, identify those which have not been updated. So there is a lot in this report, which I think needs to be followed up. And how is that going to be achieved or carried out? Thank you, Chairman.
I can come back on some of those points because I'm aware of the findings from the audit, but in terms of giving you assurance on what's happening across the council, I'm not operationally involved in that. Just picking up the points around the project risks, they're the responsibility of the project team to manage. So we have a small risk management team that coordinates the information, but responsibility rests with that project board in the same way the operational risks rest with the service manager. So the team provide the structure around the risk management policy around how risks should be managed and documented, but it is the operational teams that are responsible for identifying the risks and documenting them. The team should come in and identify if those areas aren't being updated, and the service managers and assistant directors have a role to play in that as well. In terms of the number of projects and it being an area of increased risk, we're going through a period of transformation where there's a lot of projects ongoing. So that's why there's a lot of distinct separate projects to transform the council. So there's more going on, and obviously the risk management team, the specialists in that area, are targeting the high risk projects where they can deploy their resources. But it is the project lead's responsibility to manage risk and make sure those risk registers are updated. One of the controls the team had introduced, as recommended in the last audit, was making sure the assistant directors have access to all of those registers so they can oversee that process as well, because they have a role to play in making sure that their staff are keeping those up to date, reviewing them in line with the risk management strategy, and making sure those dates are input and revised if necessary. Does that cover all? In terms of the follow-up, sorry, we'd be doing an audit every year, so we'll follow it up again next year. As we discussed earlier around some of the strategic risks, that if there was a scope that you wanted us to look at more in detail, I can work with you to look at that.
Through you, Chairman, I don't know what I don't know and have no information on. So I just do not know. But I do note that in 6.5, it says there, it is hoped that the new model will improve senior management engagement. Those words I do not like to read, because it means that risk is there, but it is not being monitored as much as I would have thought we should be monitoring, with senior management aware of what is happening. So that is an area, I think, there are significant changes due to be introduced early 2025. The changes have not been run past members or group leaders at the moment. It may be later on. I am surprised that it isn't, but put that to one side. That isn't an audit problem, but will improve senior management engagement. And I did highlight earlier on today about the audit committee are only cited on the top 11 strategic risks. There are a lot of other risks, and if they're not fed in to the structure as they should be, there may be others high risk projects which are not being fully cited on for whatever reason, workload, whatever. And I do have concerns about 6.3, 6.4, 6.5, and then which are also repeated in the table in 6.9, where it says not robust system in place to identification, assessment, recording, control, and monitoring of operational control objective is not achieved. The council should be aware of it in some form.
Gage.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, what we've heard today is increasing risks externally in terms of the council. And then if we're talking about audit, there's obviously as well a lot of uncertainty in the future for the internal audit team. And, you know, as Roger has just mentioned, that it's important that that the audit team get good engagement with management. And I also didn't like that sentence very much. And I'd also like to agree with Nigel's point about the fact that, and I appreciate it's not your job to be explaining how people do things operationally, but the very existence of a strong audit team, and from everything I've seen, you are a strong audit team, but your numbers are dwindling. The very existence of a strong audit team should alert people to make sure they are following policies and procedures. So back to the resolution that Councillor Lumbey put forward, there's a fight between myself and Roger as who's going to second it. So I think I would think that there would be support for that. But, you know, throughout the report, there were distress signals coming out that I feel we should support the internal audit team with.
Well, that will come on the next, the resolution will come on the next report, because the next report is also relevant to it. I think one of the things that we might bear in mind is that within 3 months, we're going to get virtually a completely new officer alignment and team, which we hope to hear about next week. And then in 3 months' time, a completely new council with a lot of new members on it. It's almost as though we're trying to create a council from the beginning. And this is taking, the development of the new management team is taking considerable time with the financial restrictions we've got. And it's reflected across the organisation, including the way in which we manage internal audit. So that's just one thing to be borne in mind, but the concerns that you are expressing will come out even more strongly after the next report. So shall we accept this report?
Jim, I thought we were taking Councillor Long's.
The next one. You'll see the next one is relevant.
Can I also say, Chairman, that you've highlighted one of the big risks for this council when I said about the political administration changes. There are a number of changes going on. This is the first time that I have been a councillor that, as a group leader or a senior councillor, have not been involved, and it's all being done with behind closed doors, if you wish, and members have not been senior members have not. That will be followed up elsewhere.
Yeah, not for this committee.
But yet, I understand that followed up elsewhere. The process has been adopted, which is a little bit strange. However, it comes back to the report earlier on today, when there'll be new officers, a new executive team, a new no longer called directors, as I understand it, new councillors coming in, all at the same time, and so close to May, there may well be changes still required after the May by the new administration or whoever it is, and to do a management restructure now and then do another one in the summer. Always seen, and I have highlighted it several ways, a big risk for this council.
It will be difficult. I think the council will be the management team will be so small by the time we've finished that it would be difficult to change it, but we shall see.
Members run the council, Chairman, and members hopefully will dictate how the council is policies, and this seems to have gone completely contrary to that, but that's elsewhere.
Yeah, I think we'll agree with that elsewhere. Shall we accept the report as it stands at the moment? Agreed. Thank you. Now, you'll find this Barry's next report reflects on all that we have already discussed. So Barry, take it away, as they say.
Thank you, Chair. So just in terms of the normal planning process for developing the internal audit plan for the forthcoming financial year, what we would normally do is engage with senior leaders and exec directors within the organisation during the November, early December period. We would then look to use the information that we'd gathered through our conversations with the exec team in terms of what their considerations might be in terms of the control environment and what we would need to look at. We'd marry that information with our own internal risk assessment that we do across the organisation. So that covers all service areas in what we call our audit universe. From that, we would then develop a plan based on risk. So then that plan based on risk is matched to the resources, and then the plan is developed. Now, the timing of that process it did fall within the restructuring process and the reorganisation process in the development of the new council. So from a timing perspective, we haven't been able to determine that full process in order to bring the plan to this meeting. So the planned approach is for us to return to the July committee with a full audit plan. That will be following full engagement with senior leaders, full engagement with the exec directors, our full internal risk-based assessment, and based on the resources that we've got available, we'll be developing that plan for 25-26. In the interim, the plan in between those two periods, in addition to developing the 25-26 plan, is obviously the conclusion of the 24-25 internal audit planned works up until the 31st of March. Then between that period and the point at which the new plan is documented and agreed, we would complete follow-up audits of the lower assurance levels as we've done throughout 24-25. So that would pick up on unsatisfactory assurance opinions in addition to fundamental recommendations that have been made. Also areas that haven't been able to be completed as part of the 24-25 audit plan, and then any matters arising that are of a significant nature that require independent review in that period that are unplanned. So that would be the approach. And
right. So would you wish to say anything further about this diminution of audit resources?
It obviously is a concern when you've got vacancies within the team, and comparing that against the existing risk profile of the organisation from an internal audit perspective is a concern. However, what we do as a team, and myself and Katie review this on an ongoing basis, matching the resources that we've got available to the risk profile that we know exists. So the planned works are there and spread out through the existing team members so that we can gain that best level assurance with the best skill profile that we've got within the team to give the best insight around the internal controls that we need. As part of that process, to determine how the council's going to look in the future, obviously it's shrinking. So the internal audit service needs to match that. That will be a keen process for myself and Katie to work on in the next few months to determine what that resource level looks like, and we will go out to recruitment once we've been through a process which we need to agree with the existing workforce board, because as referred to in the report, there is a current stoppage on all external recruitment whilst that process is ongoing. However, if I felt that there was a point at which I was unable to deliver my responsibilities as Chief Audit Executive, I would be taking a report to that workforce board to demonstrate that and request that I go out to recruit to fill the roles that I need to in order to fill that responsibility.
Thank you, Barry. I think a couple of things to be borne in mind. One is that it is very difficult anyway to recruit auditors because there is a national shortage of auditors, both in the public and the private sector. And the competition for qualified auditors is very heavy indeed. And virtually the private sector are willing to pay higher than the public sector. So there's a I'll come back to you. There is a very great difficulty in recruiting auditors for our team anyway. The second point, which I would wish to make, is that the work of the audit staff has become increasingly difficult because of the pressures on the managers of the various council teams. When you are under time pressure due to reductions in staff and increase maybe in the workload, you, as a manager, you are not inclined to give audit a welcome or to think that it is the most important responsibility that you have to respond to. So there is this almost and it's a human nature, management pushback to sort of say, well, do you have to do this audit now? Can you not leave it a few months? Something of that nature. Or if you must, all right, well, we'll do as you say within the organisation. There is that, as compared with 3, 4 or more years ago, there is a less friendly or welcoming aspect to audit from line managers and others than there used to be for understandable human reasons. But it doesn't make the audit staff's job any easier. Right, having said that, who wants to come in now? Roger.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I say that some staff are being recruited now because it's decided that they are needed. One example is, of course, a new director has been appointed and a division has occurred, but there are staff being recruited. I think strategically, that horrible word again is here, and I would suggest if it can be taken forward that recruitment is commenced as soon as possible, even given the council's financial state. It is an important role, especially with all the changes that are occurring. For that change now and in a few weeks' time again, recruitment process should be started, because it may not be filled for 2 months anyway, with people transferring positions if people are brought in. So I would hope that those listening in or involved could take that on board and actually start the recruitment now of however and whatever is needed. Thank you.
I think this is an appropriate time to take Nigel's resolution.
I've just amended the start and the finish, if you don't mind, but it doesn't.
No, I thought we might have heard the discussion.
Yeah. So it now reads, whilst recognising the head of policy and governance reassurance, this committee is still worried about the further loss of an auditor. This compounds our reservations at recent meetings about the audit team's ability to provide sufficient audit function and the I'm reading my own writing there, and to provide more than the limited assurance that we're now getting used to. The vacancy level within the team is unacceptable. We recognise that there is a moratorium on recruitment, but consider senior officers should recognise the seriousness of the situation, and we request a report from such senior officers for the next committee meeting. The purpose of this motion is to support the audit team and process and reassure the audit committee.
Yes, are you seconding?
Yeah, what I was going to suggest, Chairman, that to show the feelings on the panel, that if it was jointly seconded with Councillor Halliday and myself, and maybe you as well, whichever, it shows that it isn't just from one person.
I don't think it's right that can actually jointly second something, but it will be reported as being unanimously supported. So Roger's seconding, and all those in favour, please show. That's the whole committee. I've no doubt our independent member would support it if he was able to, but
Indeed, I would, and just to echo, I think what everybody said, and during this time of huge change, both in the reorganisation and the election coming up, a strong and robust audit presence throughout the organisation, I think, is essential to remind people of that responsibility, even if it is inconvenience and not the highest priority. It's high risk time, and so to have the team out presence within the organisation, I think, is highly desirable, if not an imperative. Thank you.
Michelle, can you minute that it was unanimously supported and that the independent member, Jim Arnold, indicated that he was also in favour of the resolution? We'll make sure that that those in the senior.
That's it, Nigel, lets me have the wording because I couldn't.
Line?
Nigel, if you could let me have the wording after the meeting so I could put it in. Correctly.
You too, slow. Right, but if you will ensure that the resolution, it was unanimously supported and also accepted with his support by the independent member. And that will go to the highest level of the chief executive, or will be brought to the attention of the chief executive. What difference it will make, I do not know, but I will not be here to know. Right. Shall we, with having accepted that resolution, shall we also accept Barry's report? Agree. Right. Date and time of the next meeting is the 26th of June, by which our local government will have changed. So we now move to the exclusion of the press and public. Is it agreed that we resolve to exclude the press and public? All in agreement? Yeah. Thank you. Exempt minutes of the previous meetings.
Can we extend the line thing, please?